Okay, hello and welcome to KQED's Teach Do Now webinar in partnership with Educator Innovator. It's Monday, August 4th, and today we'll be talking about online safety and digital citizenship. I'm your host, Matt Williams, educational technologist at KQED Public Media in the Bay Area, and I'm thrilled, I really am thrilled, to kick off this course with such amazing guests. Before I introduce everyone, I'd like to take a second to quickly explain this webinar in relation to the course and what you should expect during the week ahead. Teach Do Now is an online course open to anyone, but targeted for teachers who are interested in learning how to integrate social media and 21st century learning approaches to their teaching practice. This course is designed to present these ideas using tools like Twitter and Google+ so that participants can experience their learning in action. During these 6 weeks, we will present a framework for learning where weekly topics are introduced through our Monday webinars. Participants are encouraged to participate with questions and comments during the webinar. You can even watch the webinar archive video later in the week and share comments. You can also go deeper into the conversation through our weekly Do Now prompts, where we provide useful resources to help steer the remainder of the weekly conversation, which are on the Teach Do Now blog. Unlike traditional face-to-face courses or even many online courses, this course is happening at any time, anywhere for you, the participant, to share your ideas, reply to others, ask questions, and be present when the time is right for you. We all come to this course with vastly different backgrounds and knowledge of social media, either personally or professionally, and we want this environment to embrace the diversity of our participants' knowledge. Just remember to use the hashtag TeachDoNow so people can see your comments. And a great way to see all of the comments is on our tag board at tagboard.com/teachdonow, which pulls comments from Twitter and Google+. All of these resources for discussion can be found on the Teach Do Now blog at www.kqed.org/teachdonow. Today's, we have great guests. We have Julie Mora-Blanco, Shelly Terrell, Kelly Mendoza, and Rebecca Girard. I'd like to give them a chance to briefly introduce themselves, so we'll start with Julie to begin.
Hi there, I'm Julie Mora-Blanco. I am the Safety Partner Program Manager here at Twitter. I work within the Trust and Safety team. That team handles a variety of issues from government and trademark requests through to abuse and harassment and minors and content and all of the stuff online that you don't want to see. We try to take care of that for you. Part of my job is to not only share with people what resources we currently have on Twitter, but also get feedback from the community and understand what issues are currently going on and how we can do a better job for our users.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being on this webinar, Julie. Our next guest is Kelly Mendoza. Kelly, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Mendoza, and I manage the professional development program at Common Sense Media. Common Sense Media is a nonprofit organization. We're based here in San Francisco as well. And we aim to provide parents and schools the independent voice and advice that they need to help kids thrive in a world of media and technology. So my job revolves around, in our education programs, training teachers and providing materials to help educate them around our programs. And one of our main initiatives, one of our first initiatives, was digital citizenship. But we more broadly do work around technology integration and really helping schools help students harness technology for learning in life. Prior to that, I worked at the Media Education Lab at Temple University. It's now at University of Rhode Island. And at the lab, I worked with on a couple projects near and dear to me, have to do with PBS. Frontlines Digital Nation and Growing Up Online. So I did a couple of projects around the websites for education around those two films. And so the issue of helping kids harness technology for learning in positive ways has been near and dear to my heart for a long time, so it's great to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. Our next guest is Rebecca Girard. Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Girard. I am an educator. I've been teaching for 20 years, 17 of those years here in Notre Dame High School. I teach science, and recently I've become the EdTech instigator at our school. I work with my faculty and staff and also the students, helping them to learn about technology. And one of my passions and focus is on digital citizenship, and not just digital citizenship, but as we'll talk about, citizenship, and how citizenship is the same in real life as it is online, and how to manage and curate our presence. And I've done a couple of presentations on digital dossiers, and including KQED Do Now, which was a vital experience in my class this last year. And I can't wait to continue with Do Now coming up when school starts next week.
Wow, it's quick summer. Thanks, Rebecca. And our last guest is Shelly Terrell.
Hi, thank you for having me here, first of all, with this very important conversation. I am the co-founder of EdChat, which is a teacher conversation every Tuesday. Just use the hashtag EdChat. I'm also the founder of the 30 Goals Challenge for Educators. I'm a teacher trainer. I've worked in over 20 countries face-to-face and over 100 online with several different projects. I'm also an author, so I currently publish the 30 Goals Challenge for Educators, Learning to Go, and now my recent book is Bite-Sized Potential. So I've been doing a lot of research about the way learners act digitally and how our traditions, norms, and values are changing because of that. So I'm really excited to learn from everyone here and see what they've learned as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Shelly. To those watching live right now, we welcome your comments via the TeachDoNow hashtag on Twitter or the Google Plus page. And you can also sign into the chat window on the Educator Innovator website, the page that you're watching this video right now. And converse there. Look for your questions that we can address here in the Hangout, so we can keep it as interactive as possible. We begin our 5th week of the course on the topic of online safety and digital citizenship. One of the critical roadblocks for teachers interested in student media making and online discourse is concern about safety and behavior online. The concern is evident everywhere. A search for online safety on YouTube returns over 1 million videos, with most focused on showing teens, tweens, and parents how to navigate the dangers effectively. Yet, despite the overabundance of resources, issues surrounding online safety and how to teach digital citizenship are a major concern. So the first question I'd like to ask, how do you address these concerns as an educator? And I guess let's start with Shelly, since you were the last person to introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, I want to bring up the point that I think this is more of a talk, and the reason why I say this is because, and I think Rebecca kind of feels the same as well, that it's more of a talk on citizenship in general, and that's my concern. Because the way that I address this is first of all, I look at it that way because I've seen how there's more of a focus on tests these days, that the curriculum has slowly taken out citizenship and what it means to have a meaningful life, what it means to overall have mental, physical, all the things that we used to grow up with. And I remember I used to have citizenship classes that used to teach me, why it was so important to care about other people. And I think with things like cyberbullying, things with sexting, where now we're following these behaviors and we're not even noticing that, we're not even taking part in shaping them, such as taking selfies, writing LOL. So our students, and I know we'll talk about that a little later on, but that's the way I address it with the students. I show them what's happening and I say, look, right now you might get 100 likes, you might get this spread 1,000 times, but 10 years from now, what does it mean when you decide to have a meaningful relationship? What does it mean when you have kids? And when they start looking and seeing, how our values are changing, this kids really do care about that. It's just they're so into the instant, and that's what you need to get them to reflect on, not what's your now satisfaction, but what's going to happen later.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Rebecca, would you like to chime in on that as well? Sort of the idea of citizenship in general.
I definitely agree. I mean, when we were all kids, I remember having citizenship classes as well. The difference was I could say something mean or rude, or whisper something about somebody, and it kind of disappeared. I could call someone on the phone and have a conversation, and we could talk about something, and it would go away. But with what's online and what students are using, the way they're using their phones, none of that goes away anymore. And yet, just as Shelly was saying, kids are just totally into the instant. They're into the react, respond right now, and you press send, and you can't take it back. And so it's just vital, as social media and communication, connectedness online is just another way we're communicating. So we have to start from our culture, within schools, within communities, within the families, in order to just incorporate how onlineness or the internet is part of our citizenship and who we are. And it changes the way we need to interact. And I don't know if anyone can understand what it means in 10 years when my posts come back to haunt me, or hopefully they won't. But I don't know if any of us can really project that far. And I certainly know my high school students can't. They're in the now. So how do we really help them focus as best they can and really teach them those lifelong lessons? I see there being a real positive opportunity in teaching this type of citizenship, in helping everyone become more aware of how we treat each other and actually how we treat and present ourselves. So I think that's really valuable.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. And Kelly, how do you address these issues? What kinds of resources does Common Sense Media provide to look at these?
So we offer a K-12 free digital citizenship curriculum that we've been implementing over the past 4 years. And for teachers, I think as you have technology integrated into your classroom or into your school, it's really important to build a positive culture around that technology integration. And a lot of these issues about homeschooling and what kids are doing at school and at home, the lines are really blurred. So we really advocate teachers and schools take a whole community approach to digital citizenship, and do that by getting, not only educating students, but educating parents, which I'm sure we'll get into later, and we have resources for as well. But we're really finding that, it can be challenging if you're the lone teacher doing digital citizenship at your school. But the more people you can bring in, those other teachers that are think that this is important, your principal or other staff at the school, to build that community, then these behaviors become more of a norm in your school. So I would encourage you to check that out. It's commonsense.org/educators, and you'll see digital citizenship and all of our resources there. But I also want to add one point that we always bring up in terms of the digital and versus citizenship. I do think that it does warrant, I totally see where you're coming from in terms of talking about citizenship as a whole, but we need to consider certain affordances that the digital world provides that aren't available face-to-face, and it does magnify a lot of these issues as students share or maybe post things. It is different in the digital world, and we do need to understand those differences. So with that said, I also want to add that kids are going through the same developmental milestones that they've gone through, right? Their brains are developing, they're still going through those milestones, and so now put them in the digital world, and again, all these behaviors or problems or things that could go wrong get magnified. So we really want to help them. We do need to guide them through that environment, and we also want them to harness all the potential and the greatness there is for connecting with others in a digital world.
Great. Julie, how do you feel? What do you think the concerns, how do you address the concerns through Twitter and the work that you do?
Yeah, I think just to touch on the points that everyone has made, we have a saying here, it takes a flock. And so I think that really goes along with what everyone has been saying, that it's not only the responsibility of the students, but educators and parents, as well as the platform, to all come together and figure out, how kids can interact safely in that space, or treat each other the best way they can. I think we often talk about that same sort of idea, that this is your online life, and your on your online and offline life are both very much the same, and that oftentimes just a reflection of what's happening in real life. And so for us, we should be doing more. I can tell you that now. I think that one of the things that we want to do more of is partner with groups like Common Sense Media, where we can say, hey, this is, point our users toward their guides. But what we have right now is safety.twitter.com, and that's where we house all of our safety materials. And we work globally with partners to figure out what's best, not only for just students, but what's best for you in your area. What's the language that you speak with your kids? And so trying to get people those tools where they are based is part of our mission. But generally, yeah, I think what we've seen work really well is when educators are right there with students and understanding what applications they're using, and just having a general understanding of what Snapchat is, or just the tools that they're using, so that kids feel like they can easily connect with them and say, I can tell you about this issue because you know what I'm talking about. And so that's where we kind of see our role and the educator's role in this game.
Great. It all, for some teachers, this sort of idea of, shifting the culture and helping sort of steer into embracing the culture of the school to embrace digital citizenship. How can a teacher sort of, what's their role really for doing that, for those, especially those who feel that like this might be, it encompasses so much. Like you talk about the stakes are so high now when you post something, and how do you as a teacher kind of handle that? Rebecca, you can answer that question.
Well,
what kinds of steps do you go through in your students?
And it can be a challenge. There definitely are some educators who are much more willing to flex and embrace the change and find out more, just as Julia was saying, about learning about what these apps are as students are using, or learning a common language so that everyone in the community is talking using the same types of terms around citizenship and social media specifically. And that can be difficult for older of us who are just not used to having those tools in education, whereas our students, it's been their whole lives. I mean, they've just grown up with devices. They've grown up with the internet. So I don't feel that educators have a luxury anymore to say that social media or the internet or being online has no place in education. And we as teachers have a role and a duty to kind of be mentors for students in whatever we're teaching. And since citizenship is such a vital piece, whether it's in person or online, we have to find a way as educators to learn about it and become comfortable enough that we can have conversations with our students and we can help, even if it's learning together. I tell my students we're learning together all the time, and that kind of helps them feel a little more comfortable. Knowing that, there was one time that I made a mistake and I posted something into the wrong account, and I told my students, I was like, that was my personal post about my family, and I stuck it on my work Twitter because I was on my phone and I posted the wrong thing. And so we had this whole conversation. It wasn't that it was anything bad, it was just I don't post pictures of my kids that I want my family to see to somewhere that is my academic person. So we had this conversation about it, and them seeing that we're learning together, we're learning how to kind of navigate this, is really important. And we as educators, we just don't have a luxury to say, I'm not going to be involved, I'm not going to know about it, I'm not going to talk about it with my kids. And especially at my level where I teach high school. Mm-hmm. High school, it's even more important, I think, than even elementary is at this point. It's just going to continue getting more and more vital for educators, for the whole community to be involved, and for parents to be educated as well, and empowered to help teach their children this way.
Great.
Common Sense Media, great place to start.
Shelly, what do you think? What do you tell teachers who say that there's no place for social media in formal education? Like, what kinds of, what are
one of the things I'm about is getting teachers comfortable making those steps, and that's why I curate so many online professional development that is free, like EdChat. EdChat has really gotten a lot of teachers who were very nervous about entering conversations. And first of all, I want to say, once again, something like this is so very important, because one of the things that you have done with Teach Do Now is you've gotten a conversation going between a parent, Common Sense Media, and then Twitter. I mean, and that's the kind of conversations we need to constantly be having, because this isn't something that's part of a curriculum. This is something that affects us all in life, and that's what I try to tell teachers. That a lot of times teachers say, well, this is the parent responsibility, and then I try to tell them, yeah, but look at what you're already doing. You're already posting, like Rebecca said, and I think it's so important, especially like what Rebecca was saying, where you give examples, and that's what I try to do with teachers too. Last week I was talking to teachers from New Jersey, and I showed with them a picture, and it was what was on the headlines all over the UK when the head of the MI6 was coming in. His wife had posted him in Speedos on Facebook and had left her account open. And so even people, the smartest people in the world, make mistakes. I was showing them professional basketball players, people in the government who send these photos and on Twitter and are having these controversial issues. And all of this is showing how already our norms, our values, our traditions, what we would have never thought 10 years ago is now normal. It's actually part of our values. So many parents I talk with think privacy with your phone, with your computer is a value, and it's not. And I think that's what I try to go as, not as, hey, teachers, it's your duty necessarily. It's everyone's duty, but guess what? We, as educators, we get to pick up that mantle. And the reason we're picking up the mantle is because we got to give this mission to our kids. We've got to give them responsibility. We've got to let them know, because if not, things that we really love, like sitting together and having a conversation without a phone, those are going to become very, very seldom moments that we get to have. And the reason they become seldom moments is not a device, because a device doesn't make us do that. It's because people don't share with each other, hey, this is what we need to do. And if we don't have that conversation in schools, and if we don't work with parents, and if we don't work with Common Sense Media, and we don't work with Twitter and all that, then these things will just go. So that's what I try to impart to teachers, and a lot of them see it that way, and they see, hey, I think sometimes we attack teachers and we say, hey, you're not on social media, you're not doing this, but really it's just getting them to understand we all need to do this for the world, for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Kelly, what would you suggest are some good first steps to a novice teacher in this in these social media tools, and how to sort of think about, as an educator, what they can do, how they draw the line between, Rebecca, you talked about how you accidentally posted a picture on a different Twitter account. Where do we learn these lines, and how do we make those?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different things that I think about with social media. It's kind of, in education, is kind of a bad word, so to speak, because it's like, oh, well, Twitter and Facebook in the classroom, oh my gosh, but there are people doing it. And so I think, there's a couple opportunities. I think what we're seeing is, more progressive schools actually including Twitter and Facebook in educational spaces, but with very specific parameters. And I encourage you to visit the New York City Department of Education. They have social media policy that they launched for the district for teachers and for students, and it's really great just to see how they've laid out the parameters. So there's those pieces of actually using sites that we're using in our mainstream everyday lives, like Google Plus or whatever it may be, in the classroom. But I think there's more. I think there's also opportunity for these walled garden environments for teachers to have students practice these skills in a safe environment, that's an educational environment, where the teacher is the model and can help them get through mistakes that aren't as impactful as if you post, to your point, something to the whole world. So I give Edmodo as an example of that, because you have your classes, it's this walled garden where students are learning these communication norms and skills, and the teacher is guiding them in that. And if they make a mistake, it's within the walled garden, and it's not out to for the public to see. So there, I think it was mentioned by Jessica that there's a huge role for teachers to model these behaviors to students. So it's almost, if you're a teacher out there, think about not only
digital citizenship for your students, but for yourself. What are you modeling to your students in how you present yourself to the world and how you communicate? But to kind of sum it up, I think there's so much potential for teachers to guide students in these environments, whether it's walled garden or whether their school or districts decides that they are going to allow Twitter or even Facebook in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of potential, and the teachers can really lead the way.
Great. And do you have a sense? Do you recall that the social media policy the Department of Education at New York City has? Were there any points that you remember those? I'm just curious.
You know, I mean, one of the points for teachers, and I think this is maybe a no-brainer for some people, and maybe not, is to, if you are going to have like a Facebook profile and you are going to interact with your students, to have a totally separate professional profile. Jessica, you mentioned like you have a personal and professional. And so it's important to make that distinction in your Twitter, you know, separate those two. But it can get really blurry. So, you know, I think, again, I think I'll go to the hashtag and tweet it out if I can find the links. But they've been really great, and you know, in helping other districts think about how they want to start incorporating social media. But
great. Julie, can you talk a little about some of the online safety tips that you guys provide on Twitter for students and teachers?
And just briefly, I wanted to say that I love all of the examples that you guys have given. Anecdotally speaking, we often see that the problems that users face are really coming from adults. A lot of kids face more unique situations online that are specific to them, but I find what's really interesting is that adults are the majority of people that we deal with when it comes to issues on Twitter, and I just find it incredible how much, you know, there is that learning opportunity. That Rebecca, I love your example of in the moment being able to give that sort of example is so perfect, because I mean, and I'm not the educator here at all, but it feels like a little bit of an effortless learning session that is exactly in that moment of showing, hey, we're all human, and this can be tricky. So I would love to see more parents and educators really showing that example to their own students that, hey, I messed up too. Like, it's not
transparency.
Or here's what you do in the case of something going wrong. You know, I think in terms of safety tips, our safety tips are really geared towards both adults and kids. And a lot of what we see in a lot of our message is really around counter speech, or don't be a bystander. I think what we see often, or not often, but what we'll see mainly out of the youth space is we'll see profiles kind of coming up to like gossip girl accounts, they call them, and we'll see some of those become problematic. But what we see on the flip side that is so supportive and awesome are accounts that are designed to lift people up and make comments about how great this person is and call people out. And I love those examples. But more than anything, without even having to create another account, the best thing that I've seen people do is stand up for somebody else, say something when something's going wrong, and actually just put themselves out there, or if not putting yourself out there because it might not be the best situation, just connecting with that individual to let them know that you support them, and offering as much advice as that you can on your own, or directing them to resources that might be able to help and provide more info.
Great. And Rebecca, in terms of being one of the practitioners of Do Now this past year, how did you sort of assign your students to use Twitter? Did they create their own? Did they have to create their own separate accounts? Did they use the same account that they had for their own personal use? How did you sort of negotiate that sort of personal academic line?
Yeah, because I think it was really important that we started from there. Also in communicating to our parents, because Erin Kahn, my colleague, and I were the first two to start with Do Now in the fall last year. And a lot of our parents aren't on Twitter and don't know exactly what Twitter is, except thinking that it's this, you know, post all these little statements about your life. I'm like, well, there's so much educational value. You know, my PLN from Twitter, I learned more from Twitter as an educator and even as a parent than a lot of other sites, so I love it. But sharing with the students and really scaffolding for them how to use Twitter. And I did have them either, if they had an account already, It had to be one they weren't really using if they wanted to keep it, or they needed to make a separate academic Twitter account so that they weren't, posting what they had for lunch on their same one that they were using with KQED Do Now, or as their academic person, or what we would be tweeting in class. We had class chats too, that type of thing. So, in the way that I try to keep mine kind of separate, I wanted to help them learn how to kind of keep that separate too, the academic professional side. We practiced tweeting actually offline first. They found it really challenging to use such short statements, which was great as a writing tool. They had to be succinct. And then we moved from there to them creating their own memes or blog posts and tweeting those out and having discussions. They needed to reply not only to other students who were responding to the Do Nows, but also Aaron Kahn's class. It was another class at our school. They were actually responding to each other's, providing feedback on the blog posts or the memes or whatever the other students were creating. So it went from 140 characters to I want to connect to my thoughts in a greater detail or depth or with more creativity and innovation to share what I'm thinking about with this Do Now. And it was just kind of scaffolded from very simple up to much more complex, and really the students took it over. And again, that learning from each other, learning with each other kind of happened organically. Yeah, it was really fun. They also knew that the quickest way to get in touch with Miss Gerard was through Twitter, because it's the only thing I have that comes to my phone. About halfway through the year, if they had a question, they would tweet me and they'd be like, "Hey, Miss Gerard," which is a fun connection to make with the high school students, because it's really quick and easy to respond. For me as a teacher, I didn't have to write a big email, yet they felt responded to and cared about and connected with, and could get their question that's bugging them answered relatively quickly. And anyone else in our class might see it too and respond first. So that was really fun. So I loved it.
Very cool. I'd like to sort of think a little more about like what other people on this panel think about that relationship of students, identities on their personal social media versus their academic, or can it be blurred, or does it need to be separated? I'm curious. Kelly, what kinds of resources, or how does Common Sense Media kind of look at that through your digital citizenship course?
Yeah, so we have a whole topic around self-image and identity, and what students are reflecting on in these lessons are how they're presenting themselves online and how other people may interpret that. Because their friends will interpret it in one way, and their teacher in another way, and their grandma in another way, right? And really think about audience in your self-presentation online. And I do think, to Rebecca's point, it's important to make that distinction, because that's how we make our distinction in our professional lives, is making that, the personal and the private. But, sometimes the lines are blurred. And that's okay, because sometimes we share things about our personal lives that are totally relevant in the academic space or in our workspaces. So I think the earlier we can help students think of that, the better. Also, helping students think about, I think especially teenagers, as they're online, they're trying on different hats and different identities, and they're experimenting online, and that can actually be really great, because a really great space, because they can do avatars, or they can try out a different personality and everything, maybe through games, but I think the line is when you are hurting yourself or hurting another person through that identity, that's the problem. So we have a lot of authentic discussions and video prompts and things to help students think about, what is the line, and are you being true to yourself? You're the core of who you are when you present yourself online. Is that true to who you really are? And are you hurting yourself, or are you hurting others? So, particularly middle school and high school, you can have deep discussions about what identity means online, and helping them think through audience, and think through, who's going to interpret this, and what might they interpret about who you are.
Great. Shelly, would you like to respond to the issue of students' identities?
Yes, and actually, one of the things that I do is I'm also an online professor. for the Ministry of Education in Spain, and we developed this course for teachers, and they've never been on social media before. And one of the things that they first go through is a whole module on digital literacy, citizenship. And we go through the common sense, actually, because we love common sense media. And we love, one of the things about common sense media that I have to say is that each of the resources are well adapted to each age group. In other words, you'll find things for really little kids that they'll really pay attention to, and you'll find things for adults that they'll pay attention to, and teenagers. So that's really great. But I remember we actually have our teachers, they make avatars, and they don't publish things online. Like, they're really new to this. And we have a hashtag. And one of the things we do is we have them first, when they join Twitter, they have to do a Twitter story. And just like Rebecca was describing, they find it really difficult too, you know, that they have to tell a story. And it's great, the things they come up with and the challenges that they come up with as well. But when they're doing avatars, I remember there was a lot of pushback, and they kept saying, oh, this is just for little kids. This is what little kids do. And I said, no, actually, if you look at a lot of adults, and you look at I have a joke with UK educators on Twitter, because most of them have like a cat or a cartoon. They don't really have themselves on there. I think that a lot of us, even now, we have problems with our online avatars as well. And so it's interesting because they have to actually make up a character with it, and then they have to get their students to also, and they all interact that way with their avatars. And after the kids make the avatars, whatever group they teach, because we don't know, you know, what age group, we have them go back and ask reflective questions. Well, why did you make it in this image? Why did you choose these clothes? Why did you choose to be this? And we get students to look back, and to even, they get their students to give answers like their self-image, how they feel comfortable, and what they're proud of about themselves, and what, you know, some things that they feel kind of uncomfortable as well. And then the teachers really, when they become with that part of the stage, they begin to see how, you know, the students, they a lot of times there's great things that can come about a digital avatar image. It's one way for students who don't necessarily feel comfortable, like even the shyest students, can be superheroes, or they can be someone really great. And that's what we try to get teachers, after the students have reflected, to say, hey, well, you can be anyone. You can do amazing things online. So here's your opportunity, you know, go ahead. But like, it's important that you make that first step first, where you get to see your self-image, because if not, then you project all of these things, and you don't really reflect on them.
Great. Are there other activities that maybe Rebecca or Kelly or Julie, you've seen that kind of help sort of build digital citizenship or online safety awareness with, you know, in that teachers use in the classroom, that you could share?
Well, I definitely say, you know, using Do Now with Twitter was definitely one. Going through the Common Sense Media activities, they are phenomenal, and just as we've said, they're designed for every level, every age, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a family member, whatever. They're really great. I also had my students start creating websites this last year, which is the first time I did that. And that was really great, because that reflection piece that we're talking about, that students can put stuff out there and they can self-reflect or explain in more detail than just a tweet, or link in a tweet to their blog post or their page. And also reflecting, one student reflecting on another student's work, because I had a lot of that. And what I saw was, over the year, the way my students interacted on social media, even from their personal side, changed. Students would come in and they would talk about, oh, did you guys see what so-and-so posted on Facebook yesterday? Well, you know, I thought I was going to say something back, and then I remembered what we were talking about, and I decided that I would just call that person up and just tell them what I wanted to say. I mean, that was an amazing day when a student said that, because I know I have a teenage daughter. They don't use the phone to talk on it. But I could see that, you know, the lines can get blurred both ways, but I've seen a lot of positiveness from doing a lot of social media activities or postings or tweeting or using those common sense resources. The more the students are interacting that way in positive ways with the teacher in the classroom with each other, I think that really helps them build their confidence in understanding how to interact online. And that's that citizenship piece we're talking about across the board, not just digital citizenship, but even calling someone up and talking to them instead of posting something. That was pretty amazing. I saw that over the whole year. It was great.
That's great. I was curious about that because the lines blurring, I think I was wondering if there was, when you create these different identities, these sort of school Twitter account versus the personal, does that sort of just separate them as almost like separating their personalities, and that they don't really see they don't learn from both of them perhaps, but you've just sort of commented that
Yeah.
it doesn't. Kelly, could you talk a little bit about some of these activities, maybe more for the high school audience?
We have lots of activities that are age appropriate for your students, that cover a variety of topics in the curriculum that I referred to. And I think a couple things are I would encourage you to check out if you're new. And one is video. Like a lot of our lessons have video prompts. So it's a real kid talking about a real issue that they faced that then prompts the discussion, which is really helpful to get it going, because sometimes it's like if you ask students about their digital lives, you're going to hear crickets until you until you can maybe have a prompt or something that's going to open up the space to feel like it's a safe space to start sharing. But in terms of activities that I would recommend, I mean, beyond the curriculum. One is that we see a lot of schools doing, so I have two things to say. One is schools doing a digital citizenship day, or districts doing a digital citizenship week. And this is an event that creates awareness, and you can do education with students, you can do parent night, you can have students do plays or presentations. And I think the official digital citizenship week, and I would actually have to look it up really, but it's in October, and there actually is a National Digital Citizenship Week. I will tweet it out. I think it's October, maybe mid-October, and we're involved, and there's a bunch of people involved that, if you're fired up to do something in your school, that we have a series of activity ideas or things that you could do, from very low-hanging fruit things to more big, elaborate productions in your school or district. So we're seeing that more and more, and it's really helping, I guess, create that whole community approach that's so important. Another thing that I'm seeing is a lot of schools doing PSAs, public service announcements. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, again, part of that school-wide campaign. It's a social awareness campaign around the issue, and the students are getting involved, and you're hearing their voices and seeing their perspectives, and they're really taking ownership of it. So what that means is students would maybe create a short video that's a public service awareness announcement or public service announcement that then is shared, whether it's on your class wiki or your school website, or viewed by the whole school or the broader community. And I will tweet out, I have a colleague who every year does a contest around PSAs, and the site is called Digital ID. And so she does this yearly contest, and there are, your students can submit to her, and they're also learning as they create these videos issues around copyright and fair use, right? That's so important to digital citizenship too. And then she gives out awards and has prizes every year. So those are some other ideas that you can take home and maybe run with at your school.
That's great. What are some of the sort of PSA topics that they choose to share? Like cyberbullying, or
yeah, I think that's a big one. How to be an upstander. There's issues around privacy and digital footprints. I mean, we haven't explicitly touched on digital footprints today, but what's worth sharing versus what's not worth sharing. Mm-hmm. But I will have to look and see what their focus is this year. But I'm going to tweet it out on hashtag #TeachDoNow.
Great, thank you. Shelly, you wanted to mention something about some projects teachers have done on Twitter?
Yeah, a lot of teachers, the ones that we've seen on EdChat, we talk about this issue through the different Twitter chats, and some of the schools have actually done lift ups together, and those work out really well to kind of bind on the whole community, and they do them during like really stressful times, like right before a test. They'll get all their students, and these things go viral. Another thing teachers are doing are they're actually getting hashtags, and then they're doing things with the hashtags to try and see like if they can get action going. We've seen a whole Twitter account. I think it's West Highbrows. Oh, I never get the right name, but they actually have a whole Twitter account where they go and every day they make a good statement about something someone did. They recognize like little great things that happen in the school and they tweet about it. We've seen these. This is one of my favorite activities where teachers will actually have their students and they will put up. They carry a poster and they have this picture of a poster and it says, "Can you please share this? We're seeing how far a message can go." And you see this all over Facebook. If you follow the DitSit hashtag, they talk about these conversations and they show a lot about that. And one teacher that I recently met at a conference was saying how it's had such an impact where she showed how her one tweet went all over the world, that she got her son, who's 8 years old, to start blogging and all these great things that happen with other students seeing the impact and then started blogging, doing really great things. So there's a lot of teachers that are going running wild and trying to get their students to do great action and doing great things on social media.
That's awesome. So we've talked a lot about these great things and the affordances of social media, but I have to sort of ask the question about the not so great behaviors that happen and issues of like cyberbullying or social media posts that lead to actual bullying. I had a teacher once come up to me and I was doing a Do Now session and was asking me like what if my students are I'm just looking at my student's Twitter account and I see something that just looks like it could be he's thinking of doing something harmful to himself, and that the whole idea of having a glimpse into that person's world through social media can be overwhelming and maybe not his role or her role in dealing with that. How do you address those types of issues? Who would like to answer that one? Julie, would you be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting, and actually something I would love to hear is from the educators a bit about the struggles that they face in dealing with that, just because we're always looking to give better advice on this. But for us, when we see that, we ask that, depending on the situation, if it's where it's a child that might actually be thinking about self-harm or suicide, we definitely want anybody to report that, and we'd love for people to reach out to us we have a reporting form, or just reaching out, if you know that person, to reach out directly to them and let them know where resources are. That's essentially what our role is in that. But we really encourage students to file tickets for themselves, file reports to Twitter on their own. I think it empowers you to know where to report, but also how to do it, and know that you can get a response and there's somebody there that'll help walk you through it. And in the case that this comes up again, you can learn to handle it on your own. I think for educators, knowing where those reporting resources are is a really good thing. In our Safety Center, we have an educator section that we're looking to really build out. But our focus is really on trying to point educators in the right direction with where they can go find these tools and resources. And I think what we've seen that is so just encouraging and helpful is when there's that peer-to-peer sharing, similar to the video project that Kelly was talking about. We participate in the No Bull Challenge, which they're having their awards this week, or this weekend, I should say, down in LA. Similar situation where they do, they have kids create videos and over the year and talk about their experiences or share safety tips with each other. And the most positive thing out of that is just seeing that peer-to-peer sharing and how much kids really look at that and go, oh, okay, I can do this too. I can relate to that. And it's not that adult or company telling you this is what you do. So the more we can get each other, our kids to share that information with each other, I think that would be a really great place to start.
Great. Kelly, how about you? How do you sort of address those issues of cyberbullying and children who are sort of reaching out through social media?
So, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I think the research shows that kids who are bullied, I mean, that it's not just online, but it's the online that's really magnifying everything. So it's a lot of the same signs that you would look for in kids who are being bullied, but you know, a lot of it's difficult signs. I mean, it's, you know, being withdrawn or, and I think, you know, parents really want, if they realize there's an issue with, you know, their kids' participation in the online world, they just want to take the technology away and you know, just get off the computer. And the thing is, kids don't often want to do that because A, there's things happening 24/7 online that they feel like they have to know what's going on, and B, you are cutting them off from maybe other support networks that are out there for them. Maybe they're other friends. So with kids, you know, even a small act of kindness can be so meaningful. Whether that's, you know, saying like that's not cool if they see something online, that if they see bullying or drama going on online. Those little small acts of kindness are so powerful. So a lot of kids, when you talk about being an upstander, it's almost intimidating, like, oh, what does that mean? I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I want to step up and like get in the middle of a situation like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be that big at all. It can be these little small acts of kindness. So I mean, that's what I would. That's just one idea out of many, and I think it's up to the teacher to model and facilitate those acts of kindness and make it part of the culture at the school. But yeah, along with, I like that that Julie brought up the point of these reporting systems, because they do, a lot of these sites have these educational centers and reporting systems that do exist, and you can report this kind of behavior on the sites, and it's available to you as a user to use. And you know, I think the question is, because it's such an urgent feeling when you're being bullied and you can't control anything, is well, what's happening? Like, I reported it, and now what? And that's the question that parents and teachers often ask. Well, they reported it, but we don't know like what's happening and when it's going to be taken down, and I don't know how to make that more transparent. But I think that, you know, I'm happy that the industry has stepped up and like really provided all of these tools within the actual platforms themselves for students to use.
That's great. Rebecca, you wanted to say something?
And I would say, as an educator, I know for myself, and I know a lot of teachers express concern over being kind of in charge of then needing to monitor all of that with their students, and how overwhelming that can feel as an educator. You know, mandated reporters, if we see anything, we're mandated in order to say things. And that's why I think it's so important to have these types of tools and resources be really well known for teachers. One of the benefits, though, we've talked about how everything lives online. I think one of the benefits, or one of the positive opportunities here, is that when there is a cry for help, or when a student does you know, bully or kind of misstep, make bad choices, they last a little longer for people to see them, and not just me as an educator, but other people. This is why I think it's so important for parents and educators and community, the whole community, to be online together. You know, we're online we're on the playground with them, and if we're on the playground with them in real life, then we should be on the ultimate playground, which is the internet, helping them kind of navigate through what that's like. And I know for some teachers specifically, they're more comfortable with kind of that responsibility, and other teachers it's a little more challenging, or they're a little more reticent to it. But I see that it's, again, one of those things that we need to be really focused on as a whole community. It's not just my job, just because I've chosen to be on social media. It's everyone's job. And things like Common Sense Media and understanding how Twitter works, and these wonderful safety resources that I know Julie said she's going to tweet out for where those exactly are phenomenal, because there's a lot of help out there. You're not on your own navigating this. The kids aren't, and we aren't. Thank goodness.
Yeah. So that I have one question, and Shelly, you can. It's sort of along the lines of the last question, which is, how do you how do you change culture in schools, in the school community, to sort of embrace use of social media, knowing that there's these challenges as well as, of course, the affordances. What are some steps that teachers could take if you're that lone teacher, or wanting to sort of, you see the benefits, wanting to help the school kind of modernize a little bit?
Oh, well, I think that is a great, important challenge, and I love what Kelly and Rebecca and Julie all said, because they're really important. And one of the things that I want to get on Kelly said is the first thing we want to do is we want to, first of all, you're going to run into this. You're going to run into these issues. Your students are going to be doing bad things on social media, and you're going to have to deal with them as a teacher. So the great thing is to do beforehand is sort of set up a measure for that. I had this difficulty when I first started doing this in 2004 at Facebook. My principal said, anyone on Facebook, you let us know, and they're going to be, we're suspending every kid on Facebook. And I said, I'm not doing that. I said that, I can't have a real conversation or anything if my students believe they're going to be punished, and then I'm not going to be able to correct that behavior. And that's what's important. You look at this as teachable moments. We don't take the technology away. Instead, let's give them a chance after we talk and have a discussion all together to really do something better. And one of the things I try to tell teachers is show them, have the students look around their social network and see how they're already doing good things. For example, my niece. When my sister started having her go on Facebook, I think she was about 9 or 10 because all her other student was doing it. She had these conversations. My sister's a teacher, so and she was like teacher of the year or whatever. And so for her, she only let her kids for a while watch Disney movies. But when my niece went on, and she talked to her about the positive behaviors. I remember this one instant, and I use this with the other kids, is that one of her friends made a comment and said, "Oh, I'm ugly or fat." When her friends did that, she went on and she said, "No, actually, you're very pretty, and you shouldn't say that about yourself." And showing kids things like that, like saying, "Hey, that's not going over bullying thing. That's just kind of, saying something nice is something good as well." And that's what I try to get teachers to do, is to just try to make those measures. Talk to the counselor and say, hey, if we see this happening, I'm going to teach with social media. How do I deal with kid wanting to commit suicide or bullying? And just get a conversation going how you're going to take care of it ahead of time.
Great. Thank you for that, Shelly. We're almost out of time. We just got some questions in from the chat, which unfortunately we don't really have time to talk about. We will be having another webinar next week where we'll be getting more into teaching practices, and we could talk about more resources. And also, I wanted to talk about a little bit of how we can incorporate Common Core standards into teaching digital citizenship and these types of things. So we'll have a little bit of a cliffhanger for this webinar. So come back next week and we can continue that conversation. So we have about 3 more minutes. I just wanted to quickly thank everyone again for the great conversation. This has been really enriching and meaningful, and I think it will be a really great resource for teachers to go back to and watch. And we will have a full video recording of this webinar available immediately at Educator Innovator, as well as on kqed.org/teachdonow, with other curated content on the way in the next couple of days that you can view and continue to have the conversation this week about these issues. This wraps up our 5th webinar of the Teach Do Now course, but that doesn't mean our conversations have to pause just here. Keep talking about this, about online safety, digital citizenship, connect with people, use the Teach Do Now hashtag so that way the conversation can be aggregated and people can really chime in. Excuse me. We have a Do Now prompt that you can look at and continue to discuss these ideas. And also, one last thing, mark your calendars for Monday, August 11th at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the 6th and final webinar in this series as we explore teaching practices in the digital age. Again, I want to just thank our guests, Julie, Kelly, Rebecca, and Shelly. You guys were awesome, and thank you for taking time to be here today. To learn a little bit more about Educator Innovator and its network of partners, please check out www.educatorinnovator.org. And for more information about connected learning activities happening this summer, you can go to www.makesummer.org and follow the Twitter hashtag #MakeSummer. And one last thing, as I continue to read through my script here. If you are interested in learning more about our Do Now working group this fall and want to join, please visit kqed.org/do now. Scroll down to the Apply to the KQED Do Now working group for fall 2014. We're getting a lot of applications, and we would love to get more and really generate a larger pool of students talking about compelling issues in their communities and using social media to have that conversation. So it's 5 o'clock, and I would like to thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Such a great